We live in the age of information, and one of the crucial questions concerning humanity is the way in which you respond to the information that surrounds us. And there are different multiple reports which have been cited by various agencies and the global academic communities with respect to the way in which the fake information has become a crucial problem or one of the major problems to deal with in the future. And to do that, we have some organizations, we have some key individuals who have played a key role in terms of making us understand how we can process, access, and analyze and interpret the information that we see around us. Today, we have with us Pratik Sinha, one of the key founders of Alt News, the biggest fact-checking platform in India. I welcome you, sir, for this particular talk and conversation.
Thank you.
So we could start with something very basic. What is fake news?
Actually, we don't use the phrase fake news at all inside Alt News. Because there's no nuance in terms of fake news. Information can have varying degrees of truth or untruth. There's no nuance in that word. And plus, the phrase fake news refers to news, whereas we are surrounded by a lot of information which need not be news, but it is still true or false. So we like to use the phrase misinformation and disinformation.
What exactly is fake information? How do we define fake news? So there is a debate and discussion with respect to fake news. What entails fake news? Is it something which is a very recent phenomena that has emerged with respect to the digital technology, or is it something which has happened in the past? So we can go into the question of what is fake news? How do we understand fake news in the context of digitalization of the society? And was there something in the past which was like fake news? How is it different from propaganda, misinformation, and disinformation? So there are many categories that we are trying to delve into. And if you can possibly give me a kind of an elaboration of how we can make it easier for the audiences to understand what fake news is, what is the appropriate term that we can possibly use to delve into this particular question or the problem that we are confronting with respect to disinformation and the work that we are trying to do in the present times.
Right. So as I was saying that we use the phrase misinformation or disinformation, and then we categorize information into different things. There are, false information, misleading information, trying to give the audience a sense of when we are talking about a particular piece of information, what is that, what is the degree of authenticity or inauthenticity of that piece of information. So essentially, when you talk about disinformation, disinformation is information that one shares knowing that it is false information, knowing that it is not completely true information, and knowing that they share that information. Misinformation is information that that people share without knowing that it is true or false. It's a very polarized society that we live in, and that polarization, what it does is that a lot of us are believing things because we have a certain bias. So most of us are not even bothering to check a piece of information. If it adheres to our bias, then we end up sharing it. If not sharing it, we at least end up internalizing it. So I would say a majority of the case is a case of misinformation. That is, people are consuming, internalizing, and distributing something that they don't know whether it is true or false. That is a big chunk. The much smaller chunk is the people who are creating disinformation. That is, people sitting in political parties, people sitting in corporate organizations, people sitting in pharma organizations, people sitting in someone who's running a homeopathy unit, someone who's running a Ayurveda unit. They are the ones who know many things to be false and yet choose to yet share it and ensure that it goes viral. So those are the people who are creating disinformation. So there are two broad sort of areas.
Sure. Is it something which has emerged only in the recent past, or do we have history of information and disinformation before the digital technology as well?
We've had a long history of disinformation, misinformation, disinformation. For example, when I was a kid, I remember this whole Ganesh drinking milk controversy. And this was probably in the mid to late 90s, where suddenly the whole country was going to Ganesh temples and trying to give milk to Ganesh, because it was claimed that Ganesh is drinking milk. And then it eventually turned out to be that it was a surface tension issue, that because there's so much surface tension, it felt like that Ganesh is drinking milk. Now that is the sort of in my living memory, that is the earliest case of such widespread disinformation that I remember, of the sort of the social media kind of disinformation. The difference between now and then is that as a child you have one memory of one such case. Today it is happening every day. Today a similar kind of misinformation and most of the disinformation slash misinformation that is going viral is far more harmful. That particular was amusing, did not do harm to anyone. A statue drinking milk doesn't cause bodily harm to anyone. But today many pieces of such misinformation are going viral every day across the world. And when it comes to India, you put out a piece of information from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, it's gone in seconds. So what is different now is that even though there is a history of the world witnessing all kinds of misinformation, disinformation, what is different now is the acceleration that it gets in the age of Facebook, Google, YouTube, Instagram, that it gets amplified to a degree that people across the world can find a particular piece of information within hours. And that kind of acceleration was never there. And that is why today we are here talking about the issue and acknowledging that while people who creating disinformation for especially for political purposes was always there, but today there is another factor to that formula, which is the platform, and what role platform is playing and how it has enabled the creation of misinformation and disinformation, because it also helps the platforms make more money.
All right, thank you so much for that response. Is it something peculiar about India which makes it the hotbed of misinformation and disinformation? Because if we look at the rankings of India in the Global Risk Report, there they put India at the top of the risk, the manifestation of disinformation and misinformation. So how do you look at India uniquely as some place where disinformation and misinformation is possibly going to happen as compared to other regions in the world?
Firstly, I don't necessarily look at India uniquely. I do think that India has a huge case of misinformation, but we have seen other countries which have a lot of misinformation. For example, US itself, where people stormed the US Capitol because they thought that the election was stolen, and it is equivalent of storming the Indian Parliament, where there is huge amount of vaccine misinformation, where there's another kind of misinformation industry that is going on in the US. We have seen Myanmar, where a genocide happened on the back of misinformation and hate speech that was put out in an organized way on Facebook by the army, and which was against the Rohingyas. And we have seen an entire genocide happening. We have seen thousands of people dying. We have seen what is happening in the present Israel-Palestine war, where there's so much misinformation against the Palestinians. We have seen so I can keep going on. We have seen riots in Sri Lanka, all of that. So in terms of misinformation, this is a global phenomenon, and the world is feeling it. People are dying. People are losing lives. Even India seems like to be on the top because we have a huge population. Anything we do is on the top. So even in terms of misinformation, in terms of weaponizing of our information ecosystem, knowing that we have a certain history, for example, the history of India-Pakistan, which translates into a Hindu-Muslim issue, and which is why we have a lot of misinformation which has Hindu-Muslim lines because of our history of India-Pakistan. We know that we are still not literate country. The data rates have gone down since Geo came into picture. Then people have started consuming videos. This is starting 2016, uh, and so now everybody is consuming information in visual form. Earlier, before, till up to 2015, it was very expensive to consume so much video. Now you can consume a lot of video, and misinformation can be put out much more easily through video. So a large part of India is consuming information through video, but cannot do a Google search. So they they will be able to see a video which claims something, but they do not have the skills to be able to do even a Google search. So from that point of view, India is in a very unique state because of low literacy rates, because of extremely cheap data connections, because of our divisive history. We have had two partitions. We have had the India-Pakistan partition, and then we have had the Bangladesh war. So which creates the partitions itself. The trauma lasts for decades and decades. So, and of course, we have also been a colony, which has its own trauma. So our history, our present positioning in terms of a developing country with low literacy rate, all of this makes us very, very vulnerable to misinformation.
All right. So there is a debate related to internet, that internet has democratized the voices, that there are more people who are coming on the platforms and they're able to express themselves in a way which was not possible when the traditional media conglomerates or it was maintaining the hegemony or the domination over the content that gets distributed in the society. So on one side, there is a democratization debate or discussion with respect to the internet and what it has done. On the second side, there is a cons to it. There are people who are putting the opinions on the social media platforms without there being a kind of a regulatory mechanism. So on one side, there is a freedom of expression, which is culminating in the form of people putting something venomous on the social media, and that gives them the kind of the channel or a kind of a platform to express their opinions. But on the other side, it is becoming something volatile and dangerous for the society. So how do you reconcile the both? On one side, the democratization process of the internet, allowing Dalits, allowing socio-economic marginalized classes to express their opinions. On the other side, you have this vitriolic online hatred going on with respect to the social media.
So I would draw an analogy of how the vehicle industry in this country has developed. There was a time when only rich people could have vehicles. Very few had cars. Even to have a two-wheeler was a luxury. Today, so many people have cars, so many people have two-wheelers. Now, the usage of vehicles has increased. Do we see a scenario where people are randomly crashing into each other, dying every single day everywhere? We don't see that. There is some amount of control, even though this city, Bangalore itself, has seen the craziest explosion of traffic, but you don't see people dying every second. And the reason for that is because the vehicular traffic grew while there was already a framework in which it was supposed to operate. You're supposed to stop at red lights, you're supposed to slow down your vehicle when you see a yellow, and you're supposed to go when it is green. When the yellow is blinking, which means that you can look carefully all sides, but the signal is not on. So when there's a footpath, you allow, that means that the people who are crossing, who are walking, have the first right. So the vehicular traffic grew in a certain framework, and that framework existed before the explosion of vehicular traffic happened. So then we did not enter a world of chaos. But however, in this particular case, while it is absolutely true that internet has helped democratize voices, social media has helped democratize voices. Let's start with blogging, for example. That is, I remember blogging as the first thing which actually took away the power from the media, which was very highly controlled, and that is when people started expressing their views online. I still remember NDTV suing a blogger because they had said something about the NDTV coverage. So that is where challenge to mainstream media was first launched, and it increased as the growth of social media increased. But all of this happened in a space where we don't know how to deal with it. We don't know what to do when an accident happens. We don't know what to do when 10 cars pile up. We don't know how to prevent, once a 10-car pileup has happened in one place, we don't know how to prevent it the next time. We don't know how to create flyovers. We have no clue how to deal with the increasing traffic on social media. And that is where the problem is, that it is a space which is very tricky. While we want the freedom of speech, but at the same point of time, there are people who are abusing freedom of speech, who are putting venom and hate into the society. So then different people, when two vehicles collide, the government gets nothing out of it. It is not advantage for the government. But when information industry becomes vitriolic, many governments are actually getting advantage from the information disorder. They have no reason to stop it. So that is the problem, that while vehicular traffic becoming bad in a city is bad for governance, that people will say, oh, there are so many accidents in the city, but information disorder going bad is actually good for the government. It helps the government. So they have no incentive to control this issue, and that is at the core of the problem. And of course, the platforms itself, which is the equivalent of that, is not there in the traffic analogy, but we have this other variable, platforms, which are these billion-dollar companies who can earn money only if more and more people watch content on the platforms, and that can happen only if they somehow weaponize your emotions, because core we are emotional beings. It is that which keeps us glued to our screens. That is, there's a constant emotional trigger that we get when we are on screens.
When it comes to the consumption of news in India by the audiences, I think that most of the people prefer going to the social media platforms directly as opposed to going to the particular website on a news page or something like that. So how do you look at the role of social media platforms, or the intermediaries that we call them, in terms of spreading disinformation or misinformation in India particularly? You addressed that question in your previous response as well, but then particularly with respect to Facebook, how does it function? What is the mechanism through which it operate the disinformation and misinformation on social media?
So I would like to sort of make a small correction to what you're saying. It is not that we choose to consume information from social media and we avoid news websites. No. Every platform has a policy that you should not exit the platform. That is, you should not click on a link and go out of the platform. So, and this policy, over the years, they realized that if they rank news articles higher, then you're going from Facebook to a news website. You're exiting the platform.
Yes.
So at some point, the platforms made a policy change that they'll de-rank anything that is a link. When we are talking to a class full of students, everybody has seen information only on social media through reels, etc. Is because, for example, Instagram doesn't even let you put a link. The only link you can put in Instagram is in your bio, and you cannot put any other link. So it is by design that the platforms have ensured that you do not see news websites. It is not our choice. They have made a choice for us, that they have downranked all the links. They have upranked all the videos and photos and what is native. So then if you start watching a reel, then you're only on the platform. If you're watching a reel on YouTube, then for next few hours, you're scrolling, you're not going out of the platform. So the whole design is to ensure that you don't exit the platform, and that is why we have stopped consuming news. Because over years they have trapped us in these platforms, and now there will be a time soon when young people don't even know what is the concept of consuming news, because it doesn't come on their timelines. They are hooked to the social media platforms, and these platforms are ensuring that you don't see the news.
Okay. So, what is the role of the social media in terms of making something viral in the political public sphere in India? Can we elaborate a little bit on that? So, how, for example, is Facebook different from Twitter as opposed to Instagram? Since you said that we cannot click a link on Instagram and go to some other website, but with respect to Facebook, it is also true, is it?
No, in Facebook you can click a link on and go outside, but if you see your feed, you will hardly see any clickable links. The only clickable links would be the sponsored advertisements. What you will see is content which is native to the platform, that is images, text and videos. That is what you will see. You will hardly see a news link on your feed. Let's say if you count 100 posts, go and count how many links do you count in those 100 posts, and it'll be evident that all these platforms like Facebook have downranked links.
All right. So we will go to the work that you do. That is the core question now, which is about alt news. We'll get into the nomenclature first. So, what does it signify, alt news? And yeah, what do you do as a part of the organization that you have started in 2017?
So, alt is obviously for alternative. In the US context, it has a very different meaning. It means alt-right.
Exactly.
But I felt that alternative is a very, very strong word, and that there has to be an alternative to what is mainstream. The idea of alt news is that mainstream media was failing to do was its job, whether it is, and it continues to fail to do what is its primary job, that is to do journalism with some degree of honesty, and that there was a need for alternative to mainstream media, and that is where the name alt news comes into picture.
Okay. Yeah. So, what is alt news all about? What do we need to know about alt news?
So, alt news, we started off as information verification platform, as a fact checking outlet. But over time, at present, we do multiple things. We look at misinformation on social media and in mainstream media. We are a media watchdog. We look at media very closely. We try to see what narratives they are trying to set, what is that they don't want to talk about, what are they talking about, where is the stress on, what are they avoiding talking about. We document hate speech. The last 4-5 years has seen an enormous increase in hate speech, because every single day India is becoming a more polarized country, and therefore it is easier to put out hate speech. We have also put out so much misinformation against the minority communities that we have villainized the minority communities. Once you villainize a certain community, then which makes them lesser than others, then it is easy to put out hate speech against them. As a society, we are at a point where the minority communities have been villainized so much that politicians are now using hate speech in their platform, in their speeches, and it goes, people are okay with that. There's a lot of hate music that is being played, so then we document all of that. We look at platform accountability. We look at what the likes of Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, what are they doing, what are they not doing. Mostly we look at what are they not doing and what they ought to do. And the last thing that we do is we talk about digital literacy, we do workshops and all of that. So mostly 4 things.
What about the tools that you use in terms of tracking the virality of a particular news which is being circulated in the society? So, I was going through the website, I looked at the CrowdTangle, or there was the TweetDeck.
So, Facebook has closed CrowdTangle.
Yes.
And TweetDeck is now, even if it exists, it's only a paid app. Virality, what is virality? How many people are talking about a specific issue, right? If there is an image which says that after 1962 war, Jawaharlal Nehru was almost lynched by a crowd. Okay, there's an image which goes viral every year. Now you take the keywords from that and you search for it on different platforms, and you see how many people are sharing it. So that is how you gauge virality. In alt news, we are not using a bunch of tools, because when I'm invited to teach, everybody is asking, okay, what tools should we use? What tools should we use? But the reality is that within alternatives, we are not using many tools. We are just using simple tactics or strategies to how to look at information.
So, for example, we have a case, we have one information circulating in the society, which is about that UNESCO has declared Prime Minister Modi as the best Prime Minister in the world. Now, Alt News wants to get into it and wants to verify the authenticity of the news. I want to know a bit of methodology which is involved. What are the steps that will require me to actually check the accuracy of this particular news?
Alt news would typically take up stories which have a higher degree of causing harm to the society in general. This does not necessarily will cause harm to the society, but let's say if we had to take up the story, then the claim is saying that UNESCO has declared so. So then we will first look at the UNESCO website. We will do a keyword search that has UNESCO said something like that. So we will go to Google. We will say UNESCO PM Modi best Prime Minister space site colon UNESCO.org or whatever that website is. Next, so if we don't find anything, then we will try to find the local UNESCO representative, and we will call that person and we'll get a statement from them. Now, in case of sensitive stories, where this one is not a sensitive story, but in case of politicized stories, then often people do not want to be quoted on record. So in that case, we will be like, we will be okay with an anonymous quote. If it is a story which has to do where there's involvement of police, then we often take the police quote. But we will only publish the police quote when there is more circumstantial evidence, where there are other people who are verifying the police story. Information feel authentic. So it is also a matter of a sense that, okay, now I have enough information that I can write a story. And yeah, that is the general process. If it is a video or an image, then we will do a reverse video search. We will take a screenshot from the video. We will put it on reverse search engines like Google Lens, Yandex, etc. We'll try to find the origin of the video. Let's say the video is from Rampur in Uttar Pradesh. Then we will try to see, is there a billboard that we can see in the video, where we can say that, oh, this is in this particular area of Rampur, and that particular police station needs to be called. So we will look at clues. Let's say a video is being claimed from Bengal, but people are speaking in Telugu. Then we are like, okay, no, this can't possibly from. So we look at different cues, different little things to geolocate the video or the image, and then we try and answer. So then we have answered the question, which is where. Then we answer the question when. When did this video or photo happen? And then once we have answered the questions where and when, then we try and answer the question what happened. So when, where, and what.
What are the recurrent themes you could say that you identify? Which are the main sources which can be cited for the spread of the fake news or the misinformation, disinformation in India? Recurrent themes in the sense, the key themes, if there are any.
I think the largest chunk of misinformation is against the minorities. That has been the largest chunk of misinformation that we have seen, which happens 24/7, 365 days. It doesn't matter whether there's an election or there's no election. The other theme is pre-election and post-election disinformation. So there is a bunch of pre-election disinformation and there's a bunch of post-election disinformation. Information has been weaponized is because disinformation helps you in setting narratives and in trying to mold narratives, and which is where the political parties and the media are also involved. So anytime there is an issue which is widely discussed in the news, then there is always disinformation around it, whether it is recently the Arjikar issue or the Bahraich issue which we are seeing now, or before that the Tablighi Jamaat issue. All of these issues which are hugely discussed in news are very often completely molded out of shape through disinformation.
All right. So what do you think is the impact of fact-checking on the spread of misinformation in the society? Do you think that the impact is significant, and this is where you want to be, or is it something just the beginning that you have imagined?
What I can say is that when we started off in 2017, people did not doubt the information they were seeing at all. I feel that there is a significant chunk of the population who knows that false information is prevalent, and that there are instances where they will doubt the piece of information. So, in terms of recognition that misinformation, see, misinformation is a societal issue. We are dealing with a societal issue, we are dealing with a platform issue, we are dealing with a cultural issue, we are dealing with many things. So, first, we have to acknowledge that the issue exists, and at least people at large, directly or indirectly, are acknowledging the issue. Even in villages, people now know that information can be manipulated. This was not the case even 4-5 years ago, where people did not know that information could be manipulated to this extent. So, I think when it comes to the impact of, I wouldn't say just alt news, but fact checking, but there are many organizations which are fact checking, and first impact is that there is a general acknowledgement that there is an issue. In terms of beyond this, I don't think journalism is the only solution. Journalism is only part of the solution. The role journalism plays is exactly that, that is to raise awareness around an issue. So, let us say if there is an area where people are suddenly stopping, not taking vaccines, okay, they are saying that, oh, we are not going to take the polio vaccine. So, then journalism's role is to inform people that people are not taking polio vaccines, and this may be the reason. But then eventually the administration has to come into picture, do an awareness campaign, and it is only then that the vaccination rates will increase. It will not increase just by journalism. So, there has to be an awareness component that has to be associated with it, and that is what is almost missing, largely missing in this country. Or where I see myself, or where I see the organization, is in both these spaces, that is doing journalism to raise awareness about the issue, and then focusing on creating curriculums, creating educational content using which can be taught in different classrooms in this country, so that we can address the awareness aspect.
With respect to the curriculum, and there are so many debates which are taking place in the country as of now, and also in the world, with respect to the concept of media literacy, that media literacy has to be integrated with the curriculum, and it has to be taught in the school level, and then the students really need to know what they are consuming, and this is something very significant, and it has been cited as one of the crucial indicators or parameters through which we can possibly curb misinformation, disinformation. But how do you look at the family? How do we deal with the question of family becomes the major source of information? So, what I see in India basically is that through our family, we get most of our information related to our belief system and political ideology and cultural beliefs, and then the schooling system and the colleges basically try to critically engage us and try to deconstruct us in what we learn from the families. So, how do we address the question of the media literacy in the context of a family?
Firstly, what I would want to say is, again, I want to remind that this is a societal issue. It is not that we will have all the answers to a question. You, at least the way I have learnt about dealing with problems is that break them down into smaller problems, deal with one problem, then you will figure out what the next problem is. What is the next problem? You don't figure out solutions in one go. But having said that, let's say if the younger folks in the family figure out how to deal with the world of information, they can definitely influence the conversation, which they are not able to. You need a certain amount of confidence in what you know. It is not that the younger folks and families are not influencing conversations. They do influence conversations. That is when they are able to come with a certain merit to their conversation. And if we teach younger people how to look at information critically, I am quite certain that the conversation with the family will be influenced. Will it solve the issue? I don't know. But at least it is a first step. And once we take that first step, then we figure out what could be the second step. But the problem is that we have not even taken a micro step towards that direction.
Wonderful. So, we have, as a part of our university, 4 schools, major schools in our university. One is the business school, one is the law school, then we have engineering school, then we have School of Liberal Arts. So how significant and important is for us to basically to introduce media literacy at all the levels, which is not only relevant for the liberal arts student, or is it also something which has to be taught to the engineering students? So is there a more need there with respect to teaching the engineering students about the idea of media
I
literacy?
think engineers need to be taught more, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm an engineer, and engineers get holed up in one cubicle, and they have no clue about the world. They don't know why they are creating a solution, who they are creating a solution for. They just know a boss who comes and says, do this. Why they're doing this, they don't know. So if at all anyone needs to know more about information literacy, then it is the engineers. Firstly, I would like to say that. But
That's a great point. Yeah, I agree with that.
actually, information literacy is a life skill. It is as important as knowing how to do 2 plus 2, as knowing how to swim, as knowing how to cycle. It is a life skill, and life skills should ideally be taught at a younger age. I am not saying don't teach at the university, but I am saying teach it at a younger age, because when you are coming to the university, you are already in the frame of mind that, oh, I want to get a job. At that point of time, you are not interested in learning a life skill. You are interested in learning a skill which will get you a job. There is no way you can make a case that, oh, you learn how to fact check and that is how you will get a job, unless corporates put that in there, but which is never going to happen. So what I am trying to say is that there is a much better case of teaching how to look at information at a school level, where we are anyway, the school is for teaching life skills, and this is a life skill. Every department, whether it's engineering, whether it's liberal arts, whether it's journalism, whether it's medical science, we have seen so much disinformation during COVID coming from doctors. We were fed so many drugs which none of the other countries were not feeding. You know, whether it is remdesivir or this or that, you know, people were spending lakhs on injections. It had become a free for all thing, you know, where the pharma industry made a lot of money, and it indirectly poses a problem for modern medicine, that people lose their belief in modern medicine, and then they go for other things which do more harm than good. So I believe that information literacy, how to look at information, how to exist in this world of information, is a life skill and should be learned by everyone at every stage of their lives.
Do you think that the government is doing enough to contain misinformation in our society?
Government is actually encouraging it. Not only is not doing anything, it is encouraging it. It is benefiting from it. It is creating. It has through different means. It has created a media infrastructure which is extremely partisan, which adds to the misinformation. But there's also one-sided information, where there's not covering of important issues. So, for example, how many people covered the Hindenburg issue? You know, how many people, when the Tablighi Jamaat issue was happening during COVID, there was also the issue of people, workers walking back to their homes. The issue of worker walking back to their homes was barely covered. Everybody focused on the Tablighi Jamaat issue. So what is being not shown, what is being shown, all of this is a problem, and government is at the center of it. Government is the one which is deciding who gets the advertisement, who doesn't get the advertisements. Government is the one who is making calls and asking big corporates to not advertise a particular media house or stop advertising in a particular media house. So the information ecosystem that we live in is hugely a doing of our government.
What are the challenges of a fact checker? I mean, you on daily basis identify one particular information which is circulating in the society. You look at the credibility of the information, but then does this simple work, which involves just checking facts, put you in some kind of trouble, or what are the problems that you face as a fact checker?
So the challenges are multifold. One is how to run an organization. You know, this is we run completely on donations. So which means that we can only have a small team. We don't take any advertisements. We don't take any corporate money. We only take donations from individuals. So finances is the first part. The second part is that we are always looking at the dark side of the world. We're always looking at, we are documenting hate speech, we are looking at misinformation. Misinformation very often comprises of violence, violent videos, violent imagery. So we are very often looking at that kind of imagery. The other thing is that governments are not very happy when you tell them that, when someone tells that they are lying, and so then the governments come after you. The governments do cases against you, and then you have to spend lots and lots of legal expense. You have to be constantly scared. You have to be constantly worried, constantly on the guard as to what you're saying, where you're saying. So there are many challenges.
All right. So as AI is intersecting with different aspects of our social, cultural, political reality, it's also integrating with journalism and information. And we talk about the deep fakes in the present times. What do you see the future of fake news after 5 years?
I see that what AI will do firstly is that it will further make us informationally illiterate. So for example, now when someone does a Google search, there was a time 3 years ago when if you do a Google search, you will have to open a link and look inside. Now Google will summarize it, give you a 2-line summary outside. Google Gemini will give you a summary. You look at the summary, you will not even go inside the website, and then you will create a worldview based on a summary, not on a news article, but on a summary of a news article. AI is being used for making us into a population who will further recede into not knowing how to deal with information. And that is very dangerous.
All right. And do you have any suggestions for journalism department or the media studies department in terms of dealing with the question of fake news or misinformation, disinformation? So how do we engage our students on the question of disinformation?
I feel that all of us should come together and create a curriculum firstly, that is engaging. In all the teaching opportunities I've had, I feel that the students are quite interested. If it is presented in the right way, they are ready to engage with it. And what we have to do is put together our heads and create a kick-ass curriculum. That is what we need to do.
Do we have any examples of that kind of curriculum which has been created as of now, or it's the work in progress?
It is all work in progress.
Work in progress. Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here. It was pleasure having you here, and great conversation.